So speaking of NFL draft, objectively speaking, putting now HBCU hats aside,
Mm-hmm.
how many players, give a ballpark view, how many players, based upon what you've seen throughout the year, including the Legacy Bowl and everything, how many players, HBCU players, we expect to be drafted? One would expect to be drafted. Again, objectively speaking, in this year's draft.
Objectively speaking,
Yeah.
if I'm going for the ceiling is two.
Mm.
I'm being very realistic. And it did not help for some of the comments from USFL officials when they talked about their rookie draft class as well. One quote from Daryl Johnson, yes, that Daryl Johnson, the
Bruce
Moose,
Johnson, okay. All
yes,
right.
who is the executive vice president of football operations over there at the USFL, where he
Mm-hmm.
literally said, our focus is on the back end when he's talking about, well, when he talked about the rookie class that they just drafted for the USFL, he
Mm-hmm.
basically said our focus is the back end of the NFL draft potential, meaning basically the seventh, or the sixth and seventh rounds, and guys who will potentially end up being undrafted free agents. Since
Yeah.
our GMs and scouts were at the college all-star games, they understand the athlete and that they were looking for, so that it makes the challenge. Well, that kind of took away the challenge part in terms of what guys they should or shouldn't take in their draft, because they didn't want to end up taking a guy who they felt as though would end up going rounds 5 or higher, because
Sure.
they didn't want to mess up their chances of making it to the NFL.
Right.
That was followed up by Jim Pop, who was the director of player administration at the USFL, where he basically said, we've done our homework. So the majority of the players we drafted probably won't be drafted in the NFL.
Mm.
The reason why I bring that up, the two guys who worked out at the NFL Combine, Isaiah Land and Mark Evans, were both drafted in the USFL draft. But to their benefit, they were both drafted in late rounds. And I believe that their draft went up to 8 rounds. Both guys were drafted rounds 5 or later.
Okay.
So, those were guys that were talents that were ended up being taken later. But, there's still guys that, they see as potentially not making an NFL roster as a draft pick. It's not to say that they won't make a roster, period. But there is basically saying that their chances of being drafted are kind of slim. So that's why I said that the ceiling at best is probably 2.
Because Isaiah Land, he was a baller last year. So that's why I was a little bit, that surprised me a little bit. But then again, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
And so
he had a wonderful combine.
yeah.
He ran, what was it, like a 4.69?
Mm-hmm.
What was that? Where is it at here? A 4.62, I'm sorry. He ran a 4.62, 13th fastest for edge rushers there, for D linemen there at the combine. He had outstanding vertical and broad jumps, which are both top 10 in terms of his position class. But he's still 230. He's 234 right now.
Okay.
238. I'm sorry, 238. He gained about 10 to 15 pounds since the regular season for him. So he's most definitely trying to bulk up so that, he could be looked at more as an edge rusher. But at 230, it's still a little light for a true edge rusher in the NFL.
Well, didn't that remind you of Jason Taylor? Because wasn't he kind of light? I know
He was.
Yeah, he's a Hall of Famer, but because
most definitely.
Play. Yeah.
Yeah, he was like about, what, 250, 260?
Maybe.
But, towards the end of his career, he most definitely was around that size because, of course, he was older then. But, God, I'm like I said, I'm just intrigued to see what his path is like, because being that light and probably having to continuously pack on pounds, will speak volumes on what NFL teams think of him, whether or not they draft him or not.
Yeah.
If they don't draft him, my guess is because they believe he might be a little bit too light, and they'll end up picking him up as an undrafted free agent. So that's most definitely something to keep an eye out for. But of course, Teron Armstead, the Pro Bowl offensive tackle, that's currently with the Miami Dolphins was most
Mm-hmm.
definitely speaking up for Mark Evans, his fellow Golden Lion.
Mm.
You know, pushing to do whatever he could to make sure, or whatever he can to make sure that he can potentially make his way into the league. But they most definitely are projecting Evans to be an interior offensive lineman on the next level.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I got this to say regarding the Legacy Bowl. You mentioned it was a defensive struggle, which one would, to your point, would suggest because
Mm-hmm.
we predict because you're getting everybody work, which
Yeah.
means that it's not time to build chemistry on the field and whatnot because everyone's trying to get their work in, right? Um, I like to point out to those who may use that as a negative against the Legacy Bowl, just
Mm-hmm.
because. Take a look at the East West Shrine Bowl. Everyone who watched that, that's with all the mostly Power Fives and Group of Fives,
Mm-hmm.
right? How about it was not only was a turnover fest, but the game was a 12-3 kicking battle. Okay, so just because, just in case those who want to claim to, I'm not sorry, the clown the Legacy Bowl for the lack of offensive production may contribute to HBCU talent. Look at the Shrine Bowl. Because it's like everyone gets work. Everyone gets work, to your point. Trying to rotate guys in and out so they could get noticed by scouts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's the lack of continuity that's typical of these college collegiate all-star games. So just in case anyone out there has anything smart to say about, smart elegant to say about HBCU, the Legacy Bowl, take a look at the Shrine Bowl.